Hi friends, hola amigos, it's Adelita Grijavla. We just had our Board of Supervisors meeting, and so I'd like to give you an update. First off, I want to, today is Tuesday, November 1st. Today is the last day to put your ballot in the mailbox. So if you are sitting there with it on your kitchen counter, please vote. There are many organizations that if you have questions about the propositions, about any candidates, we have information on our campaign website. Feel free to look there. But on this platform, I just want to encourage you to please vote. We had a presentation by Michael Racy from Racy and Associates and Rossi, And what he said is that there is going to be a huge shift in leadership, regardless of what political party, whether it's a Republican or Democrat majority, that 50% in the Senate and 55% in the House. All of the major governor, secretary of state, treasurer, all of those positions are up for grabs, and that the chairs of all of these really important committees, including finance and appropriations, are all going to be new. And so it's going to be a lot of work and a heavy lift for our state leadership, and I would just really like to encourage you to vote. There already people are kind of predicting and making assumptions about what's going to happen, and right now the suggestion is that Republican leadership is just going to gain a couple of positions, and those things are not said and done yet. Voting has not ended, and so I really would like to encourage you to make sure that your voice is heard. Okay, with that, I wanted to thank Alfred Urbina, the Attorney General for the Pascuayaqui tribe, for coming in person to the Board of Supervisors meeting and reading the land acknowledgement. It was so nice to see you. I mean, we are Facebook friends and text periodically, but it was really nice to see Attorney General Urbina in person. And also we went to high school together and graduated class of 89, Pueblo High School. Go Warriors. So it's always good to see people that I went to high school with just doing really amazing things. So it was good to see them. We actually had a long meeting. It started at 9 and ended at about 1:45, 1:50, and there wasn't a lot of action, but there was a lot of discussion, which I think is still healthy and good, and I like it that people can see us having these conversations. So I'll just jump into it. There was a regional prosperity task force to address poverty, improve opportunity, and create community wealth. This is a committee that would be a joint committee with the city of Tucson, and this item passed 3-2 with Supervisor Christie and Chair Bronson voting against it. And what was passed was that the county staff be directed to begin working with the city of Tucson staff, experts, and practitioners to research and develop policy options and prepare for the initiation of the task force. And then details are to come regarding makeup of the task force and what that will look like. We had, if you look on the agenda, it was fairly confusing, starting at item 13 and moving on through, item 13 was very confusing and there were different parts to it. So I'll just break down. There was a primary and secondary tax rate. That item failed to have any action. Both Supervisor Hines and myself voted in favor of moving forward with one of the scenarios, which is scenario 4, but that failed. And so we anticipate that item will come back. There are medical dental rates. There was a recommendation by County Administrator Lesher that we move forward with allocating $6.7 million from the general fund into the reserve for the Health Benefits Trust. And so what that is the county has a trust as opposed to just having outside organizations run our medical and dental benefits. And we should have a reserve of 19 to 20 million, and that reserve is created by people paying their co-pays and our monthly charges for healthcare. But right now, our reserve is short by 6.7 million. And so there was a request to come to the board to ask that be allocated. That item, we didn't actually vote on it. We're waiting for more information to come. I would have been comfortable voting for it because I think that it's important for us to have that reserve so we can pay for operations and medical expenses of our employees who have coverage. So there was an item on classification and compensation study. we are anticipating that compensation study is going to finish on February 2023, and that the recommendation is going to be that many of our positions are below market and that they would be moving up. And so our administration wanted us to allocate and set aside a 5% increase, the equivalent of that, in order to compensate for maybe this employee group in this department are under by 7%, and another one is perfectly on target, another group is at 3%. So we would have some flexibility in funding, which the equivalent was, or the ask was for $23.5 million. That item failed 2-3 with Supervisor Hines and myself voting to set aside that funding. What did pass was an $11 million, and I don't know what the percentage would be, but that item passed 4-1 to set aside $11 million for increases. And Supervisor Christie voted against that. There was number 3 had new initiative and expanded programs. And what I wanted to explain about that is that we were asked by the county administrator to go through and put together a list of things, budget priorities. And so based on our strategic plan, we put together recommendations that addressed affordable housing and eviction prevention, asking for an additional funding creation of affordable housing of at least $5 million. That was something that was allocated this past year, and I'd like to continue to add to that to make sure that that item stays as a budget line item, and ensure sufficient funding for future rental assistance and eviction programs, because a lot of that is grant funded, and if for whatever reason that falls through, we still have the need. So I wanted to make sure that we put funding set aside for that. Climate change and open space, I wanted to fund a sustainable action plan for county operations, initiatives, and water conservation. Update the 2011 fees for riparian habitat mitigation. That hasn't been updated since 2011. So some of these are not, they have a place in the budget, but it doesn't mean that it's an expenditure. This would actually be your revenue. And additional funding, at least $2 million for open space purchases. We set that aside already. That is going to be coming back to the board fairly soon, but I want to make sure that we set that money aside so we can protect areas that are up for sale that would really benefit Pima County and having our open space and trying to protect as much of our beautiful desert as we can. Healthy and safe communities, I was advocating to fund the reestablishment of the neighborhood reinvestment program, funding a new mobile clinic for the health department, funding mental health services, including crisis response, and additional funding for SunTran, SunLink, and SunVan. And then for educating our community, robust funding for Pima Early Education Program, the PEEPS program. I want to make sure that we continue to fund preschool in our community, and then funding marketing and advertising of county initiatives. So what's happening right now is every department can set aside a funding amount for marketing or advertising. That's sort of flexible depending on the department director, but they're not required to set any amount aside, and they're not required to set aside Spanish outreach. And so I want to make sure that if there is a fund set aside for marketing and advertising, that a percentage of that is dedicated to Spanish language. So that's just to keep our community informed. So those were some of the things that I was advocating for. I'm not sure why it was put on the agenda the way it was, because really that was like an inner office sort of communication to our administration, and it was on the agenda. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of what was requested of us and why it was put on the agenda for a vote. I'm in this format, I'm not really sure. While I'm speaking of PEEPS, I wanted to thank Penelope Jackson for coming and continuing to advocate for a dedicated funding for preschool, and for coming and just saying thank you. It's so nice to see a happy face and a smiling face, and thank you. I think I personally really appreciate that. So the other issues, we did pass, I believe it was unanimous, an increase in stipend pay for board workers, and this is for election workers. So all of the poll workers will receive an increase. And then I think that was the bulk of the main agenda. And then we had the addendum, had unfortunately another acceptance of a resignation for Constable John Doerr, Constable for Justice JP Precinct Number 1. That is effective November 4th. That is the second resignation in as many meetings. And I continue to be very concerned about the turnover there, who is actually at work and working to support the JPs, and what we're going to have as long-term plan for the constable office specifically. There were several items put on by Supervisor Hines regarding the RTA and PAG, and there wasn't action taken on them, but there was a good discussion about that. Supervisor Scott put forward the request for funding for installation of traffic signals, but didn't make a motion, so there was no action on that. And then there was an item put on the agenda by Supervisor Christie and this will be maybe the last one in anticipation. No, it'll be the last one in anticipation of the election coming up. But it was good to hear that 120 of our 129 voting centers are fully staffed. 128 meet the minimum requirement. So fully staffed means that there is an equal representation of all the parties and all of the positions have been filled. 128 meet the minimum requirement, so there is still one that isn't meeting the minimum requirement. And so of the ones remaining, we have 6 need 4 Republican representatives and 2 Democrat representatives. And so if we can do that, then hopefully all of our voting centers will meet the minimum requirements and most will be fully staffed, and that would be great. So if you have any interest in being a poll worker, please reach out to the Division of Elections. I know that they have the information on their website. And then I want to take an opportunity to say thank you so much to Betty Villegas, former supervisor and director of housing in South Tucson, and Shariah Jimenez for accepting my request and our request in D5 for them to be advocates and representatives of D5 in the Pima County Regional Affordable Housing Commission. Thank you so much for that, and I look forward to working with them on that. And I think that our District 5 community is so very lucky to have both of those amazing advocates and very knowledgeable advocates on that committee. And the last, again, reminder, put your ballots in the mail. And if you want to, you can come be at the BC Caravana to the ballot box. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be riding their bikes to voting boxes. And it's going to be a ride from Joaquin Murrieta Park to 1400 North Silver Bell. That'll be on Saturday, November 5th, 2022. And that's from 9 to 12. So it is a long one. We have the second annual Reach the Loop, the Diabetics Walk. That'll be Saturday, November 12th from 9 to 12 at John F. Kennedy Park in the Fiesta area at 3700 South La Choya Road. There'll be snacks and all kinds of stuff. And so we're going to have a post about this on our website. And our next meeting is going to be on November 15th. And so I encourage you to stay in touch with Pima County politics. And I want to give a huge shout out to the amazing team here at D5. They gave me all kinds of, they decorated my office and did all kinds of fun stuff for my birthday. That was on October 3rd or 30th, I'm sorry. And for those of you who sent me little notes saying, happy birthday, I really appreciate it. It was a very nice celebration. So thanks, friends. Have a great day.